Yeah, winter's coming. I love days like this. Temperature's about right. It's snow versus rain. This is the time of year I live for. And every year I feel grateful for being able to come out and enjoy it, because there'll be a time in my life where I can't, right? So while I can, definitely putting in the time. But this is kind of like my firewood honey hole here. If you look around, you can see there's some big old maples, over mature. There's one right there. I've been taking these things down for 20 years. I got more than I'll ever be able to take down in a lifetime. And not going to do it today, but that's one of the ones either I take down or God takes it down. But they're coming down. There's a few of them here. There's one here, another one here, down the hedgerow. And pretty much for about a half a mile that way, they're scattered through the woods. And every couple of years, they come down or I take them down. Kind of been my life. When I first got here, I was taking them down with Homelite 925s, 28-inch bar. But we're back to this saw right here. It's kind of funny. I got asked, why would I bother with a Holzfforma? One of those cheap saws like that, where you got to put all the time into it. That's actually a good question. Especially when I have saws like that. Lots of them to play with. My felon saws and my vintage semi-ready to fell saws. I'm going to beat those up. Parts are unavailable for those John threads, so I just wanted to be nice and pretty and run it once in a while. And the 572s get the bulk of the work around here, to be honest with you. I've got 5 of them. So, but on days like this, I'm not planning to put a full day's work in. It's freaking cold. I love it, but it is cold. I got stuff I got to do in the house, bills and taxes and stuff like that. But I need to get out because it's sanity for me to come out and work in weather like this. I just enjoy it. So here we are. But back to the question. And I'll tell you why. This started for me, years ago, 10 years ago or more. And it started out with me doing a puzzle. Basically getting all the parts I could find and putting together a saw. It was a MS660 at the time. And then one thing led to another. And over the years, I've had a variety of either Farmer Tech or Holzfforma saws to play with, do something with. And they all have issues, Very few of them have I been able to just buy or get and then have to do nothing in order to get them work ready. Really the closest saw that I've had from that company that was work ready was the G395 and the G288, those two saws. And I had terrible luck with the 372s when they first came out. I had a couple of them. I had the ostensibly low top 365 version, and then I had the one like this in orange, and then I had the XT, and the XT actually was the best. I tried to kill it, but I couldn't. But I had to modify it to get it work ready. But this was the worst one back then, and now I'm realizing that really this one here has been, they've evolved it. It's a lot better than the one I had, and I'm just documenting the litany of what I have to do on the things that I have to do in order to make this, in my mind, a useful saw. And so far, getting the compression up a little bit, buck and spike modification, that guide plate on the side of the case between the bar and the case to get the oil to come out right, stuff like that, carburetor. So yeah, money-wise, I've probably got $350 into it, Gonna push $400. But why? Why do you do things like that? And I'll tell you why. Because I can. And I enjoy tinkering with things. And it's a heck of a lot less risky to take something like this and tinker with it and make it work than it is to take a $1,100 OEM 372 and do the same thing. And it's a lot easier starting out fresh with new versus just having to clean up a bunch of junk. Now, don't get me wrong, I enjoy doing both. But sometimes just starting out with something clean where I don't have to, you know, deep clean the damn thing before I can work on it because it's so full of garbage and grease and chips and oil and stuff. You know, clean sheet. Start out with something, raw materials, and I'm going to do pretty much the same things to this saw that I would if it was a kit. So it turned out the kit price and this price was roughly the same. So let me just start with this and, you know, work backwards and just see what we build. Just see how it turns out. See where, you know, using it and the experience drives you in order to build this thing into a useful saw. If you think about it, this is exactly what I've done with the 572s over the years. You know, the same thing I did with the G395. The same thing I did with the Homelite 550 and the Husqvarna 285 is you start with something and it's sort of a template to start from and then you build it into something useful. And with this one in particular, if I can make it work, is both inexpensive and quite useful. It's certainly more parts available for this than it is the 285 or the 540 Homelite 285 Husky. And it's a lot less expensive parts and availability for things to modify that than, say, the 572s. And I don't expect to put the same kind of weight in terms of importance of what I do with that saw like I do with 572. That one's got to work, you know. It has to. This one really doesn't. You know. So what can you, you know, what can you tweak and turn and pull and push and hack and modify, starting with something like that? And at the end of the day, was it fun and was it useful? And of course, last but not least, I can put it all on video and share the experience, and along the way have discussions about topics related to saw maintenance, specifications, repair, and modification, and theory on saw setup and theory on two-stroke modifications and the physics of it, all that stuff. And it's a lot easier when you have something like that where you have to start from something and build it to something better, to have those discussions and then start out with a $1,200 saw and, you know, take the risk. Think about it this way. The top end for that's going to be 50 bucks. Top end for that's going to be 250 bucks if you hack it up. But I can show the same concepts on physics about compression and, you know, just the basics of two-stroke technology on something like that for a whole lot less money and a whole lot easier to work on than, say, you know, that 572 or a Steel 500i or anything along those lines. it's picked up quite a bit of snap. It'll start to cut now. Just proved that a few times. Yeah, it's definitely picking up power, RPMs too. It might be working out of gas. So let's see if we can get a close-up of the dynamic of the muffler and the buckets. It should be running out of fuel. Let me check real quick. Yeah, it's almost out. I don't want to run it out of fuel. One tank of fuel gets you right there. And you know, that's a couple days worth. I figure I'll bring some to the house and I'll put some in the woodshed. Every day I come out and get a little exercise like that means I get a little bit better in shape. When they get the logs off the landing, I'll start another load of logs. But there's a little Holzfforma right there, tucked away. And there's two victories in this one right here, three actually. One, a nice load of wood to burn, heat totally by wood, 100%. Second, I was able to do the splitting with my wedge driver. I was trying to come up with a combination wedge driver axe, and I think I did it. That Holzfforma performed quite well today. I don't know if you noticed, but it was picking up power as we were going through that tank. And what I was doing in there, I was plunge cutting through, and then I just hit the trigger to see if it would restart the chain after I let it stop. And it was getting better and better and better. So it's a little bit late for me to go up to the shop and check the compression, but I'm going to bet you we picked up a couple of pounds. And so yeah, this to me is a good day. You know, I try to come out here every day and do at least this much. Yeah, getting dark. So I'll go back and put up a short video, I guess. And hopefully this helps answer that question as to why. Why do you do this? You know, it's fun. It gives me a reason to talk about it. It gives me a place to work. You know, I can start with that package and build it into something different for little or no money and little or no risk. Give you more things to talk about. That's why. Come out here and take that little toy and actually do some fun things versus just out here working all the time. See, this is fun for me. This is where I find, you know, peace. You know, out here running a project saw, something that was new and different that I haven't had before. It doesn't have to be new year-wise. It can be a new for me L77. You know, running the axe, getting some exercise. This is the temperatures and the weather is perfect for me.